Good afternoon. I'm Jackie Fisher, the CEO of Algeos. So thank you for joining us at the College of Podiatry Conference here in the wonderful city of Glasgow. I hope you've all had an enjoyable morning so far. At Algeos, we are passionately committed to advancing and supporting the industry, and we're really proud today to be sponsoring the conference for a second year running. I'm also extremely pleased to be able to welcome and introduce you to Dr. Marilyn Orcharton, a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Denplan. Marilyn qualified as a dentist here in Glasgow and went on to run her own dental practice for 12 years before selling it and founding Denplan, which grew to become the leading dental healthcare scheme in the UK. Following the sale of Denplan, Marilyn founded Kite Consultants and isoplan.com, the first business-to-business website for medical professionals. Marilyn became the first president of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce in 1998, and in 1999 was honoured as one of the leading women entrepreneurs in the world and received the Medal of Honour from the British Dental Association in 2000. A great deal of Marilyn's time is devoted to assisting small businesses to grow and develop and advising and encouraging business startups. There are many similarities between dentists and podiatrists, the practices they run and the challenges they face. Marilyn is a firm believer that the future success of the country lies in the hands of small businesses, and will be sharing with us today her experiences, learnings and valuable insights to help you develop and grow your business to achieve greatness. So I'll now hand over to Marilyn. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Glasgow. For those of you who haven't been to Glasgow very often, it used to be known as No Means City. It was a very sort of poor place in many respects, and falling down buildings and quite a lot of gang warfare. If you saw a table and 4 chairs on the pavement, it wasn't a pavement cafe, it would be a warrant sale. The favourite tipple was Windolene and vodka. They still got the hangover, but at least their eyes were nice and clean in the morning. Formula One drivers came to recruit their pit crews, because where else would you find 4 men who could take wheels off a car in 20 seconds? The children's advent calendars had boarded up windows, and even the Samaritans were ex-directory. However, all that's changed, you'll be glad to know. There are some wonderful old buildings and wonderful new buildings as well. All these exhibition centres all been developed in the last few years. And there's the city chambers, the art galleries, the cathedral, and all the shops and restaurants. So I hope you get a chance to visit some of these things, because it's well worth doing so. Very few people have a calling in life that they've had since they were born, practically. But most of us decide as we go through life on something to do after we leave school, which is based on our personal experience or on what happens at school and which teachers we like and which teachers we didn't like. And we tended to take the subjects of the teachers we liked and ignore the subjects of the teachers we didn't like, which meant that some people could go through school and not have science but have arts and really not want to do that at the end of the day, and we're sorry they hadn't taken science. So it's a bit of a lucky dip, really, what people choose to do. Everybody has a conscience, and your conscience is the thing that tells you what you should do. But everybody also has an intuition. And intuition tells you what you think you could do. Our conscience, as I say, tells us to do what we get the qualifications from school to do. But maybe 10 years down the line you think, I'm not really enjoying this job, I'm not getting any job satisfaction out of it, I'm not earning as much money as I would like, and it's too late now to change. But it's never too late to change. Listen to your institution and we'll see what happens. Let me tell you my story first. The first 9 years of my life were spent in a Glasgow tenement, which I enjoyed very much. I played in all the back courts among what we called the middens, and I developed every childhood disease and some adult diseases that was possible to pick up. So I spent a lot of time in bed reading fairy stories and comics, and I developed my intuition. We moved to a terrace house with a garden, and I never had another day off school, but I was still a bit of a dreamer. When I got married, I changed doctors, and the doctor was looking at my medical records, and the only thing it said on the medical records was pes planus. Now, I believe that means flat feet. And I couldn't understand this at all, because I have got a very high instep, and I've never been able to get shoes to fit properly because of the high instep, and I have to have low-cut shoes, etc. So I thought about this for a while, and then my intuition told me my mother must have inadvertently found the cure for pes planus, because money was very tight and shoes were expensive. So I got one pair of school shoes every year and one pair of Clark's sandals for the summer every July. For parties and outings, we used to cut the toe off the last year's pair of sandals, and my father got it sprayed silver in his work. He was a window dresser. So I had the silver shoes, but my feet always seemed squashed, and I always had pain in my toes and everything. And even when I started playing hockey, my mother found a pair of hockey boots, but second hand. But she said, I've got you a size 7 because you'll be playing in them for the next 6 years. However, my feet stopped growing at size 4.5, and so I had these size 7 football boots. But I eventually managed to reach the first 11, even with the boots. But I had a part-time job on a Saturday in a shoe shop, funnily enough, and I was able to buy myself some boots that fitted. Had I known there was such a thing existing, I might have been a podiatrist. However, I also had terrible teeth. Thanks to a friendly neighbour when I was young, who used to save up all her sugar ration and syrup and make this thing called puff candy, which was a bit like a crunchy bar, but a bit more basic than that. She used to boil up this sugar and the syrup, and just when it came to the boil, she would throw in a handful of baking powder and baking soda, and the whole thing would virtually explode into this puff candy, and it stuck to your teeth. And she gave me some lots and lots all the time. So by the time I was 5, I had to go to visit a dentist and get all 8 molars, baby molars, removed because of the decay. If it hadn't been for a friendly dentist who saw what was happening to me, my permanent teeth would have gone exactly the same way, because my intuition told me something. There was a great competition on. Rowntree's Fruit Gums had a competition which was, see how long you can hold a fruit gum in your mouth. And if you could hold it for 5 minutes, you were a junior gumster. If you could hold it for 10 minutes, you were a senior gumster, etc., etc. And if you could hold it for longer than half an hour, you were a master gumster. So the great intuition says, if I put a gum in my mouth when I go to my bed and stick it to my palate and keep it there all night, I'll be a master gumster. And it worked. But it really wreaked havoc with my teeth. Every single one they became decayed all round, and the only benefit or anything that it gave me was that I got distinction for my final year's essay on the etiology of dental caries, because I had lived through the etiology of dental caries of every tooth in my mouth. And if it hadn't been for the good dentist, I wouldn't have had any teeth left. But he saw me so often that he said to me, why don't you do dentistry? And that was the reason I did dentistry, and the rest history. So some years later, I got an offer out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it, and it took me aback a bit. I had 2 small children, but at least they were both at school, and I was offered this chance to buy a shop unit in our village at a very reasonable price, with some second-hand dental equipment as well. There was no dental practice in the village, and everybody wanted there to be a practice, so they said, would I open this up and build up a practice in the village? And I thought, well, my conscience tells me just keep going with the part-time jobs I had, because I got paid for them. But my intuition said, no, this is a great opportunity and all these people will be able to have their teeth done and get the dentist. So it cost me an awful lot of money. I had to take out bills and loans and things, and the bank wouldn't lend money to women in these days. You know, you had to have a guarantor. However, my father acted as guarantor, and I opened this practice, and it went very well. It took me a while to build it up, but I took a part-time job as well so that I could pay for the overheads. Later, I eventually had enough patients to take on a locum or an extra dentist, but I still didn't have enough for 2 full-time dentists. However, the university wanted me to be one of the first group of trainers. The trainee system had just started then, when you took a new graduate and helped them. They watched you and you helped them learn dentistry. But there still wasn't enough work for 2 full-time dentists, so I made sure that the trainee had enough patients, and that meant that I had to find some other source of income as well as the income I got from the practice, which was part-time. I returned to the dental hospital, and I worked along like that for a bit. Then I still wasn't making any money at all. The trainee was doing quite well. But I decided to apply for a full-time job at the Medical Defence Union. And I went down and I was on the short list along with these other people, but I got a letter to say that they wanted to take me because I was a woman, and but they didn't want me to relocate to London, which would be involved, but offered me a job 2 days a fortnight, which was great. Because they flew me down to London. They had a nice flat near Wimpole Street, and I could stay in the flat, and they flew me back up. So it was a very interesting experience. And the gentleman who got the job was a chap, Stephen Noah, and he had a practice in Reading, and he also we worked together at the Medical Defence Union. Now, the NHS only paid the dentists for filling teeth. They didn't give any payment for gum disease or for prevention or for anything like that. It was just for filling teeth. So naturally, the dentists filled as many teeth as they could, because the more teeth they filled, the more money they got. And there was a tendency towards what we would call overprescription. And we at the Medical Defence Union helped dentists who had complaints from their patients to try and sort out the complaints. And so many of the complaints were about the cost of the treatment that I thought to myself, this is ridiculous, this doesn't work. The NHS kept changing the method of payment. It started off at 10 shillings, way back just after the health service had started, and then it gradually grew, and it was different prices for different things. And a patient would go into the dentist, and the dentist would say, you need 4 fillings. They'd say, right, fine. And they didn't actually say how much it would cost. And they would do the fillings, and then one of the fillings would turn into a root canal treatment, and they would get a bill for maybe £150 or something ridiculous like that. And of course, they thought the dentist was up to some sort of mischief. So it was hopeless. And people in poor areas, or the less advantaged areas, they all had lots of decay, and so these dentists in these areas were busy all the time filling teeth, so they were doing very well. Well, the better dentists who were in better areas kept their patients healthy, and they didn't make any money out of it, and some of them, quite a lot of them in fact, were actually going into bankruptcy. So I thought, this is terrible, and then I decided that the only answer to this system was a system whereby conscientious patients who liked getting a regular scaling and polish and visiting the dentist regularly would pay a small monthly sum, and the dentist would provide any further treatment that they needed, for no charge, unless a technician was involved. And if a technician was involved in making something, then they would pay the technician's fee. And people thought, well, that's fair enough, but the patients won't pay. The dentist said, patients won't pay, that's it, they just won't pay. So we had to try and work on this system. Stephen Noor, my husband actually, I typed a letter out to the British Dental Association, and my husband read it over my shoulder, and he said, if that's so good, do it yourself, because the British Dental Association could never do that. They're more of a trade union. So I phoned Steve and I said, what do you think? And he said, your husband's quite right, don't send the letter. So we spent a year, the two of us, working at our day jobs, but meeting once a month in London in the Caledonian Club to appease me. And we met and we discussed every aspect of how we could set up such a business. At first we thought we each had a BBC computer, and we thought we could do that with 2 BBC computers on a Saturday morning. And the idea was to just say to the dentist, this is how to, raise money for your patients without doing any of the physical stuff, just selling them a booklet on how to do it type of thing. But that obviously wasn't going to work. So what we did was we met, we got people like marketing people, PR people. We met them through our practices, and you as podiatrists will meet lots of people through your practice, and you'll talk to the people as we talk to the people, and you find out they're doing this, that or the next thing, and you get a lot of free and useful information from your patients. So we did this, but the PR people said, you really must do a market survey. You can't just start it and hope that people will come. So the first thing we did was, Steve sold his big house and bought a smaller house, and I sold my practice, and we had a bit of funds, and we registered the business, and we went out and found 2 girls who had left a big firm of PR people and were working on their own. And they did focus groups around the country for dentists and for patients, independently, the patients and the dentists. And they came back and they said, you're not going to like this, because the patients all hate dentists except their own dentist. So we said, well, that's fine, we know that. And then the patients also said, well, how do I know when they won't just take the money and not do the fillings? And we knew that as well. However, through these things, we were able to actually devise a system that was fair to all and which was policed. It was policed because we introduced peer review, so that one dentist had to look at another dentist's work once a year. And that was going to be difficult as well. So we had to take these dentists out for dinner and things like this, go around the country and, and say, and they'd say, oh, I don't want to be examined. And they'd say, but you can examine him later, and they said, oh, well, that's different. So the peer review was amazing that it actually worked. I feared the worst, that it might not work, because they wouldn't want to show another dentist all their information. But it did work. And it worked extremely well. The NHS were not particularly happy about it, although it was helping the NHS, it was saving them a fortune. There's now more than, I think it's about 11,000 dentists using it. There's 11,000 dentists in the whole country, but an awful lot of people are using the system, and the NHS has saved an absolute fortune from these people. And to my knowledge, most of the patients are very happy. I keep meeting them and they say, yes, no, it's good, but I don't know if I really wanted it or not, but that's what happened. But anyway, to set up the business was very, very difficult. We had to spend a lot of money, we had to raise venture capital, etc., and we just kept plugging at it. We had to drive around the country, going to every area and having seminars and telling the dentists what it was all about. And we had a video made with actors, showing like 2 dentists talking to each other and saying, have you joined this scheme, etc. So to try and explain how the scheme worked. And we had this video, and we had a patient video as well, which the patient said, oh, I'm in this Denplan, etc. And at the end of the seminar, which used to last about 3 hours, because we discussed every aspect of finance, etc., they would say, any questions? And the first question was always, who pays me for the fillings? And the whole point of this thing was the dentist was going to do the fillings, any new fillings as part of the plan. But anyway, they couldn't quite get their head around the fact that they would be receiving a monthly fee from patients directly, and they would hopefully keep the patients healthy. But they couldn't not do the fillings if they were needed, because there was the peer review to check that up. And also, the patients began to join quite quickly, much to the dentist's surprise. They would say, well, you know, you don't have to join, but you know, they weren't very good. They used to say, we're not good salesmen, and I would say, well, you're not good salesmen. You send out a postcard every 6 months, people come back in, they don't feel anything wrong with them, and yet you'll stick a needle in their gum and do a filling or something, and then they'll pay you when they go out the door. And if that's not good selling, I don't know what is. But they couldn't really get their head round selling this. However, it began to catch on, because it had these good dentists had to get some way of making, you know, covering their costs, because dentists pay every cost, as will podiatrists. You know, the staff, everything. They don't. They're not like the doctors who get the health service pay grants towards all their expenses. So that was it. Then. I eventually, after a few years, I was, you know, feeling the pressure of travelling up and down to London every week for 2 days a week. Well, it was 2 days a week before, but then it was full time with Denplan, which was quite good, because at least my husband didn't see that I was driving about the country till all hours of the night and working, you know, long hours. But it was becoming a bit too much for me, and the business was thriving, or doing quite well anyway. And the children were growing up, and I was missing a lot of what they were doing. So I got an offer from the venture capitalist that we'd had at the beginning, who said, you know, he would really like to come back into the business because things weren't doing so well. So I sold out then, and I was perfectly happy with the sum I got, and you know, I thought, well, that's it, and it gave me a new opportunity. And the new opportunity was to give the dentists a template for the ISO 9000, so that they could actually have a quality assurance within their practices, because that was the sort of thing that was missing out of the actual Denplan bit. And they now all have it, of course, but we did this, and this went on for quite some time. However, that too eventually did all right, and I sold that in 2010, I think it was. So the three businesses that I struggled to set up from scratch, the dental practice, Denplan, and the Isoplan, are all still going. The dental practice now has about 5 dentists in it, and the Denplan is doing very well indeed. So you have to take risks, but they quite often come off. As I said, I might have been a podiatrist if I'd known anything about it. You're a very valuable profession, because everybody has feet, and everybody has trouble with their feet at some time in their lives. And some people have a lot of trouble with their feet, with diseases such as diabetes and Buerger's disease, etc. And you really do need to up your profile, because not many people know exactly what you do or what they could do for them. However, a few months ago, my grandson was complaining about a verruca that he had in his foot. And there was all this, you know, the verruca and all this, but none of it worked. And he also had some warts on his fingers. And he went to the GP, and the GP said, yeah, well, we've got a long waiting list. There's a podiatrist comes in 1 day a month or something like this, and but there's a long waiting list, so it'll be about 6 months. So my daughter went home, and she looked up Google, and she saw a foot clinic, which was open in the evenings as well. And she phoned them up and said, could they do something about the verruca? So he went out to the foot clinic, which was very nice, and they explained exactly what the treatment was going to be. And the treatment was that they anaesthetised a little bit round a local anaesthetic round a little bit round the verruca, and then the podiatrist took a needle and stuck the needle right into the middle of the verruca, which seemed to sort of disappear into the foot, but it wasn't painful at all, he said. and put a plaster on it, and he went away, and about 3 or 4 weeks later the verruca had completely gone, and so had all the warts. Now, the human papilloma virus is very infectious, as you know, and it's something that nobody really wants, and yet there's thousands and thousands and thousands of folk out there with verrucas, and possibly warts as well. And yet I have never seen a podiatrist advertise or have a session in a gym where they're all running about in their bare feet, and they're all getting verrucas and passing them on. And it would be ideal for somebody to speak to David Lloyd Centre or something and say, look, you know, we could maybe put something together and we could have a verruca clinic at the gym every so often. I mean, that's an ideal thing for them to do. It's an open market, really, you know, and there's lots and lots of things that people don't know. I told somebody about the verruca just the other day, and they said, I'm phoning that clinic tomorrow. Well, not only are they phoning that clinic, I haven't got verruca, but I'm thinking of phoning the clinic myself because of various other things. They're very similar to dentist podiatrists. They're sort of caught between the NHS and private treatment and feel slightly guilty if you've maybe to charge the patient for something. But the same patients that you're not wanting to charge are spending an absolute fortune on hairdressers, Primark, Next, smartphones, etc., and shoes. And I have it in very good authority, my hairdresser, that all the girls in Glasgow who wear 6-inch heels are having Botox injected into the balls of their feet so that they can dance all night in the 6-inch heels and not feel any pain. Now, it's amazing really to think that, but podiatrists are actually allowed to prescribe, to give Botox to their patients. Not for people wearing 6-inch heels, but for lots of other things, they can give Botox, to things like multiple sclerosis. When the muscles all seize up, then Botox is a great way of relieving the pain in that. And if they ask for it on the balls of their feet, well, why not? If that's what they want, it's no limit to what you can do for them. But you have to sort of think about these things. I've often thought that dentists could share premises with podiatrists, and this is a great reason to have a foot and mouth clinic if you can do all these things for them. Then Botox is also used for teeth grinders. If any of you grind your teeth at night, you might have been given a sort of mouth guard or a splint to hold, to sleep with at night to stop you grinding your teeth. But in fact, if you get some Botox injected into the master muscle at the side, you won't, and you don't feel it at all, but it relaxes the muscle and you won't be able to grind your teeth. I thought they should have given it to that footballer who bit all the folk in the football match, but they don't seem to know about that. If that sort of idea sounds a bit far-fetched, then think about your own payment plan, like we did. You don't need to have it for everybody, every person in the world, but you could say to your patients, well, look, we'll have a system whereby you come to me every 4 months, or whatever you think's appropriate, and you pay me a small monthly amount of money, and you get the treatment for nothing. You can buy creams, you can buy various things for your feet, you can buy insoles, etc. All these things you can buy when you're here at the clinic, and you know that you're able to make an appointment every four months, and we'll phone you up if you want reminded. And that's quite simple and straightforward and gives you a bit of ready cash flow. And they just pay directly into your bank account. You just set up a direct debit and they'll pay directly into your bank account. Because that's what Denplan was. The patients paid directly into the bank account of the practitioner. And each practitioner actually made his own amount. We suggested £5 a month when it started, that was a while ago. But of course now it's a lot more, and some patients in London, for instance, would be charging a lot more from the beginning. But one of the bad things that happened to us in a way, well, no, it wasn't really bad, but it was a bit worrying, was that when it was £5 a month, the backs in the bank took the money out of the patient's bank account and put it into the dentist's bank account directly. So if the back system was quite new when we started this, and one day we got a phone call from the bank saying, "Have you just sold your business?" And we said, "No, we haven't." I said, "Why is that?" Because they said, "Somebody has just paid in £5 million into our bank account." And we said, "Oh gosh, that's impossible." And the person was a Denplan patient who was a member of, well, who was a customer of Coutts Bank, and obviously had £5 million in his bank, in his current account. And they just sent this out by mistake. So it was just a mistake that the banks had made, the banking clearing service had made. And we really worried what was going to happen. However, our bank phoned up immediately and said, we'll send this £5 million back. And the Coutts said, just leave it till Monday. It was a holiday weekend, just leave it till Monday. And eventually there was about £1,400 worth of interest that had accumulated, and we left it there for ages and ages and ages, and then eventually said, well, we'll just take that interest, which we probably shouldn't have done. But imagine, you know, that there are people out there who cannot miss £5 million out of their current account. But you won't be asking your customers for £5 million. You'll be asking them to pay a small amount of money every so often. And I don't know if this practice in Glasgow, where my daughter took her son, was a franchise, because they've got 3 practices in Glasgow. But franchising is really a very good idea for podiatrists, because a lot of you have sort of different skills that you want to use, and you know, you can combine them with your good colleagues and have a franchise. Now, if this company, it was at Hampden actually, it was called the Hampden Foot Clinic, if they are a franchise, then some of you might want to have a look at how much it would cost to buy into the franchise, and they will give you all the model of all the stuff they do, and even offer you training in any new techniques that you haven't really tried yet. And so, I mean, do think of that, or else you could set up your own franchise. If you've got a practice with 2 or 3 podiatrists working together, and you've got a good system, and you've got a full appointment book, then you can show, if you can show the bank that you're making a profit, the bank will allow you to open another one as a franchise. And the banks love franchises, so you get money for yourself if you needed it. Lending it, of course, you have to pay it back, unfortunately. But money to do that, or you get money if you want to become a franchisee of somebody else. But it's something worth thinking about. I got this leaflet through the post just yesterday, funnily enough. Nail fungus affects millions of people. It does, and it also affects me. And I don't want to take the strong sort of drugs that my husband has taken for it. They do work eventually, but I take other sort of medications, and I don't really want to do that. So this is it's like a light. I don't know if any of you use that sort of thing. So I'm going to phone that and find out if that works. You want to all get selling it from your practices right away. I'll let you know if it works. But I mean, that's the sort of thing that, again, there's so many people with nail fungus. You ask in any beauty parlour or spa, and they will tell you that 6 out of 10 patients come in with nail fungus, looking for a pedicure, which they cannot give because they've only got small nail files. They don't even have proper shears or anything. So you've got loads of opportunity. Think about going to spas and saying, look, this would be a great help to you. And you can think about going to dentists and saying, how about, you know, maybe renting a room from you, because it would be quite good to be with the dentist, because the people are attending the dentist anyway, and then they would just say, oh, I must pop into the podiatrist when I'm here. I've been having a bit of trouble with this, that, or the next thing. Now, another thing happened to me quite recently. Last November, I got headhunted and was offered a position as a non-executive director in an international stem cell company called Wide Cells. My conscience said, don't be silly, you know, you're too old, you've done enough stuff, sort of thing. I really shouldn't take it. But my intuition said, this is something you would love, because I'd really been interested in stem cells for a long time because I had a diabetic sister. So I took the job, and I've loved every minute of it so far. The company harvests stem cells. They can harvest them from baby cord, which is the biggest thing at the moment, baby cord, or they can harvest it from baby teeth when they fall out. The pulp of the teeth can be harvested and grown and kept frozen. Or, this is the one that really appeals to me, they can harvest it from adipose tissue. And loads and loads of people are going and getting liposuction all over the country, and it's just thrown in a bin. Now, that lipo that they take out of the people can be this full of stem cells. They can take out the stem cells and store them frozen for a while. And more people now are freezing their own stem cells, like out of their hip bone or something. And if they've got cancer or something, after they've had their treatment, the stem cells are like that verruca treatment. The stem cells will stop the cancer returning, because it will build up the immune system and stop the whole thing returning. It really is. It's something that I think is going to sort of revolutionize medicine in a way. There's over 300 diseases they can now successfully treat using stem cells. And if you can save your own stem cells, then there's no problem about incompatibility. But even the baby cord cells you can use for the adult, and you won't have any incompatibility with that either. And what they were doing was, they've got a thing called Cellplan, which was an insurance company to cover the cost of the transplantation when it came to that. Now, all these diabetics, they've now got a little framework that they can put the stem cells in, and you can put this framework over the ulcers, and the ulcers grow new skin underneath, and it'll cure these diabetic ulcers. So, as I say, there's 300 million people storing them, and it really is. It could be interesting from your point of view as well. Going to exhibitions like this is a great way of changing your life. You come and you meet different people, and you hear different things, and you go back to your work, and you say, this is great, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it just can change your life altogether. Steve and I went to a lot of conferences to learn about it, and of course, like yourselves, we didn't get any business training, so we were feeling our way and struggling. And it would have been far better if we'd taken 6 months to learn training about money and business and things like this. But it's still worth the try. So the world is really your oyster, and you'll certainly improve your awareness if you attend exhibitions like this and take home something that you can use in your own practice. Oh, sorry.